So you have a C&P exam coming up. How do you prepare for that? That's what we'll be talking about today. But first, my name is Mark. I'm the founder of Veteran Nexus. I make these videos for you, the veterans, for free in the hopes that it will give you the push you need to continue on in your own journey of winning your claims, hopefully for free. So today we're going to talk about the C&P exam, what I would do to prepare. But first, I'm not a doctor, lawyer, I'm not an accredited agent. None of this is legal, medical, financial advice. This is legit just my experience, like what I would do and like what I've heard from a lot of veterans who have been through this process after talking to them. So take that with a grain of salt, do your own research, and with that, let's dive into this topic. C&P exams, they suck. A lot of you watching, myself included, have had this experience. And how do you explain a C&P exam? It's like that night before going to MEPS. You don't know what to experience, especially if you've never done any research, you've not prepared at all. You're like, man, I've heard all the horror stories about the VA, but what's it really like? Is it going to be like that for me? All kinds of questions. And if you're naive, like I was when I started this process, I thought that the VA was going to take care of me. I thought they were going to listen to me. At that point, I hadn't really had the chance to talk to anyone. I had like a VSO that just kind of marked up my records and then sent me on my way. I couldn't even ask him questions. Like he had me for 10 minutes and that was it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna come in with a stack of papers and see if this doctor will hear me out. Bad move, by the way. Walked in there with a stack of papers, doctor rolled their eyes at me, and within 15 minutes, I was on my way to a different examination. I was like, man, that was fast. How can they figure out what's wrong with me in 15 minutes? And lo and behold, I got denied. So a lot of you likely have a similar experience to that where you thought you'd go to this exam, the VA would take care of you, give you a doctor to sit down and talk to you because no one else up to this point has talked to you for longer than, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes. And you get there and it's like this mass-produced experience where you just get moved on as fast as possible. No one really wants to talk to you. They don't want to hear your long story or look at your paperwork. They just want to move you on because they have 7 more people to see that day. Well, if that's you, it's almost like you got red-pilled into this VA claims universe. And having said that, well, what do you do the second time around? Or if you're smart and you're watching this, the first time around? Well, here's my opinion. Here is how I would prepare for a C&P exam today if I knew I had one coming. So there are 3 things I would have to establish. First, what type of claim did I file? Is it a direct service claim? Is it an increase? Is it a secondary or presumptive? Because you don't have a lot of time to talk to the VA. And you know, they'll give you maybe 5 minutes to talk. So you really want to use the time where it's going to matter the most. And part of that is, well, what type of claim did I submit so I can tell that story, not the 10 minutes in a place that doesn't even matter, right? The second thing you need to establish is, do you know what the CFR is, the Code of Federal Regulations for that condition you're going for? For example, if you're going for back pain and you have a C&P for your lower back, well, do you know how the VA rates the lower back? You might be like, oh, my back hurts so much, I think I'm 100% for my back. Or I think I'm 50% for my back. Does the VA even rate 50%? You need to check. And if it does, well, do you meet the criteria? Not what you think is 50, but what the VA thinks is 50. And do you fit in that? You have to know that going into an exam because you're like, if the CFR says it and your story is so far off from the CFR, if it's not in the VA's like code or federal regulations, they don't really care. It's like, what do we do with this guy? If he has this long story about pain, but then pain is generally 10%, don't be surprised if you get 10% because maybe you need to tell a different story if you have range of motion problems. So understand the CFR for the condition you're going in for. The third thing you need to establish is, have you looked at the DBQ? The Disability Benefits Questionnaire associated with your condition that you're about to get an exam for. So you can find these online, you can Google them, and you can look. And if you look at these DBQs, what you'll notice is the DBQs do not they're like a blank slate. They don't tell you what box is worth what rating. It's just, you just see boxes for doctors to fill in and observations. But if you know the CFR, you can look at the DBQ and say, I can see the VA is actually looking for range of motion. Going back to the lower back condition, okay, well, I know the CFR, they track your range of motion, see if there's any issues. Well, you look on the DBQ, you'll see it reflected in the DBQ, and you're like, okay, about midway through this DBQ, through the exam, the VA is going to give me, the doctor is going to give me a range of motion test. There you go. Now you know that it's not just pain you need to talk about. It's like, I need to worry about range of motion. So if you know that going in, you can at least understand what the exam will be like. Now, once you've established those three things, here's what I would do. If you look at the DBQ, you'll notice that basically all of them have a tiny box, usually not that big, and it's for the history of the condition. And you know that the doctor's asking you this when they're like, hey, can you tell me when this started? Right? It's very open-ended stuff. But when they ask me that question, remember, what type of claim did you submit? Because if it's a direct service claim, meaning this happened during your active duty service, I probably wouldn't lead with, I've been going to the VA for 20 years for back pain, right? That's you're out of order. I would say, hey, look, this started in service. Here's what happened to me. This is what happened in service. And I would go in order, and I would tell them a story to the present day. And it's like, I've dealt with this the whole time. I've been going to the hospital this long. And I might even ask them if I submitted records for my lower back, let's say. I would ask them, did you see them? Because I submitted some with my claim. And if the doctor says no, I would have not a big stack of papers. I would have like 3 pieces of paper, maybe 3 to 5 come in with. I'm like, hey, I have copies of that with me if it's a physical exam. If it's lower back or muscular, probably will be physical. And I'll be like, can I leave these with you? These are my active duty records to prove that I had something in service. The VA misses these things more than people realize. So instead of leaving this doctor a fat stack of papers, which they will not appreciate, having 2 or 3 that will actually make the difference in your claim, probably a better use of your doctor capital here, we'll call it. You don't have that many brownie points with this doctor, and you need to spend them wisely, and that is a good use of them, in my opinion. That's why it matters to know what you're claiming and how, because if it's direct, you need to go back to your service and start there, because just talking about your VA history is kind of, it's out of order. It's like, that doesn't help you win a service connection. So that's the first thing I would do. And I would look at my story and I'd refine it so that I could tell it in 4 minutes or less, because that's probably what you're going to get. Now look, that's going to seem disingenuous. You already feel like a liar most times because you're going for benefits. But like I said at the beginning of this video, this experience sucks. You're nervous. You think you're a liar because of all the stigmas associated with it. You already feel weak because you're a vet and you shouldn't be complaining because that's what it was like in the service. And at the same time, you actually need this to go through because you wouldn't be filing for disability if you didn't need the money. So this is this weird mix of feelings going through this exam. So preparing will help you so you don't choke or say something wrong or forget something. So personally, I would prepare. I would try to get my story dialed in so I know I have 4 minutes with this doctor. I just want to talk to them about what matters. And that's the point. You're not trying to lie. You're trying to use your time efficiently. So get your story right. Now, here's what I would do next. I would track the DBQ and go, okay, based off the CFR, I can see the DBQ's looking for, the CFR for range of motion, certain symptoms for certain conditions. I can identify that, and I know this doctor is going to ask me questions about this thing, or they're going to ask me about flare-ups, which might matter to your condition. Like for the lower back, flare-ups do matter. If you have no range of motion problems, but your back hurts so bad, I think it's 2 weeks out of the year, well, you can get 20% off that. And so you need to be prepared to talk about the flare-ups causing you to miss work, school, whatever. And you won't know that if you don't know the DBQ and the CFR. So those are the three main things that you need to establish and work with when you're going in here. You need to track the DBQ so you know when they're going to ask you questions. You need to figure out what questions matter, because there's a lot of stuff on the DBQ that may not help you. For example, if you're going for an increase and you're like close to the max rating for that thing, if you just talk about the same stuff that's already bothering you, how can you get an increase if the story is the same with, let's say, 50% on a mental health claim? If you're telling the 50% story and you think you're going to get higher, if it's not on the DBQ and it's not higher on the DBQ, it probably doesn't matter. And you think of it that way. So you really need to understand, again, not so that you can lie to the VA, but so you can tell your story accurately. Never lie to the VA, never lie to yourself, not for money. And you follow that and you'll be okay. But most vets lie to themselves because, frankly, we all suck at complaining, either because we talk too much or we talk too little about our conditions. So, go from there. And that's all I have to say about this subject. So don't go into the C&P exam as a willing victim. At least do those things, consider them. So when you go in there, you only have 15 minutes to see the doctor, well, you can make those 15 minutes count. And it's still a bad experience, 15 minutes to figure things out, not long enough, and it's anxiety producing. But the VA won't change its ways, so hey, you got to prepare and know what you're getting into so you don't get screwed over. So with that, I hope you got a lot of value from this video and that you tell your friends about it so that I can help them too. If this was valuable to you, please like and subscribe. Well, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care now.